The war had been going on for 3 cycles now, and the Galactic Coalition was losing badly. Commander Vex stood in the dim lighting of the command center aboard the flagship Dominion, watching red dots disappear from the tactical display one by one. Each dot represented a ship, a crew, thousands of lives snuffed out in the blink of an eye. "Sir, we've lost contact with the 7th Fleet," reported Lieutenant Karras, her forearms working frantically across multiple control panels. The Zilani officer's usually blue skin had turned a sickly gray with stress. "That's the entire outer rim defense gone." Vex's mandibles clicked together in frustration. The Devourers were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They consumed everything in their path. Planets, stars, entire solar systems, converting matter into more of their kind. No diplomacy worked. No weapon could stop them. They were a plague of mechanical locusts sweeping across the galaxy. "What about the humans?" Vex asked, though he already knew the answer would disappoint him. "Still refusing to join the Coalition forces," Karras replied. "They've retreated to their home system and gone completely silent. Our ambassadors can't even get through their defensive perimeter." Vex had always found humans puzzling. They were a young species, barely 500 years into space travel, yet they had somehow carved out a respectable territory in one of the galaxy's more dangerous sectors. Other species whispered about human unpredictability, their strange emotional responses, and their tendency to form bonds with the most unlikely creatures. Most dismissed them as primitives who got lucky. The command center shuddered as another wave of devourer ships passed through their outer defenses. These mechanical monstrosities were each the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Their hulls seemed to absorb energy rather than reflect it, making them nearly invisible until they were right on top of you. "Sir, incoming transmission from High Command," announced Communications Officer Drex. The holographic image of Admiral Thornax materialized in the center of the room. The ancient Krolix leader's scales were dulled with age and exhaustion. Behind him, Vex could see the chaos of the Coalition's last major command station. "Commander Vex, I'm authorizing Protocol Omega," Thornax said without preamble. "We're releasing the Apex." A collective gasp went through the command center. Every officer present knew about the Apex. It was legend, nightmare, and last resort all rolled into one. Somewhere in the deepest vaults of Coalition space sat a creature so dangerous that its very existence was classified beyond top secret. "Sir, with respect, the Apex has never been successfully controlled," Vex protested. "The last time it was released, it consumed an entire star system before we could contain it." "That was different," Thornax replied grimly. "We thought we could command it through force. This time we're trying something new. We're sending it to the humans." "The humans?" Vex's voice rose an octave. "Admiral, they won't even answer our communications." "What makes you think they'll accept the most dangerous creature in the galaxy?" "Because, Commander, humans have a gift that the rest of us lack. They make friends with monsters." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Vex had heard the stories, of course. Humans kept creatures as companions that other species considered deadly predators. They formed emotional bonds with beings that should have been natural enemies. There were reports of human children playing with creatures that could tear apart battle armor with their bare claws. "Sir, should we attempt to contact the human government?" Karras asked hesitantly. "No," Vex decided. "If we're really doing this, we go directly to their system. Prepare a fast courier ship and load it with all our data on the Devourers. I'll deliver the message personally." The journey to human space took 2 days, during which Vex received increasingly desperate reports from the front lines. The Devourers had broken through the Coalition's main defensive line and were now heading straight for the core worlds. Billions of civilians were evacuating, but there was nowhere left to run. As Vex's ship approached the edge of the Sol system, he was amazed by what he saw. The humans had built a defensive network unlike anything in Coalition space. Instead of massive space stations and energy shields, they had created a web of smaller installations connected by what appeared to be living organisms. Massive spaceborne creatures with bioluminescent patterns served as early warning systems, while smaller beings darted between the installations like living missiles. "Unknown vessel, this is Earth Defense Control," came a calm human voice over the communication system. "State your business or prepare to be turned away. This is Commander Vex of the Galactic Coalition. I carry an urgent message regarding the Devourer threat." There was a long pause. "Commander, you're aware that Earth has declared neutrality in this conflict?" I'm not here to recruit soldiers, Vex replied. I'm here to offer you something. Something that might save us all. Another pause. Then, you're cleared to dock at Station 7. You'll be met by Dr. Sarah Chen, our xenobiology specialist. As Vex's ship moved through the human defensive network, he noticed something remarkable. The creatures that served as guards and sensors weren't mechanical constructs or enslaved beings. They moved with purpose and intelligence, working alongside the human crews as partners rather than tools. Some of them were clearly predators. He could see rows of razor-sharp teeth and claws that could shred metal, yet they responded to human commands with what could only be described as affection. Station 7 was a marvel of bioengineering. Instead of cold metal corridors, the docking bay was lined with what appeared to be living walls that pulsed gently with their own light. The air itself seemed alive, carrying scents that somehow made Vex feel calmer despite his anxiety. Dr. Chen was waiting for him as promised. She was a small human female with graying hair and kind eyes, but Vex noticed she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to dealing with dangerous creatures. Behind her stood something that made Vex's blood freeze. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a shadow, standing nearly as tall as Vex himself. Its eyes glowed with an inner fire, and when it moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around it. This was clearly one of the legendary human companion creatures, but unlike anything Vex had encountered in the reports. Commander Vex, Dr. Chen said warmly, extending her hand in the human greeting gesture. Welcome to Earth. I understand you have something urgent to discuss. This is Umbra, by the way. Don't mind him. He's just curious about new visitors. The shadow wolf creature approached Vex slowly, sniffing the air around him. Instead of the aggressive posture Vex expected from such a predator, the creature's body language seemed almost friendly. Vex realized he was about to ask these people to accept something that had terrified the entire galaxy. Looking at Dr. Chen's calm smile and her impossible companion, he began to understand why Admiral Thornax had sent him here. Perhaps humans really could make friends with monsters. Dr. Chen led Vex through corridors that defied everything he knew about spacecraft design. The walls weren't just alive, they were intelligent. Soft tendrils would extend to offer support when someone stumbled, and the lighting adjusted automatically to each visitor's optimal visual spectrum. Vex found himself walking more easily than he had in cycles. His usual joint pain somehow diminished by the ship's bioatmosphere. You're probably wondering about our friends here, Dr. Chen said, gesturing to a cluster of small, crystalline creatures that were tending to what appeared to be a garden, growing directly from the ship's hull. We learned long ago that cooperation works better than domination. These little ones help maintain our life support systems, and in return, we provide them with a safe home and the minerals they need to reproduce. Umbra padded silently beside them, occasionally pausing to investigate interesting scents. Despite the creature's obvious predatory nature, Vex noticed that the smaller maintenance creatures showed no fear. In fact, several of them chittered what sounded like greetings as the shadow wolf passed by. Dr. Chen, Vex began carefully, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels of Coalition security. The very existence of this information could panic entire star systems. Then perhaps we should discuss it in private, she replied, leading him into a circular chamber at the station's heart. The room was dominated by a massive viewport showing Earth hanging in space like a blue-green jewel. But what caught Vex's attention was the gathering of creatures already waiting inside. There was a Terran feline, but one that seemed to shimmer between dimensions. A bird-like creature with feathers that looked like living starlight perched on a specialized stand. In one corner, something that appeared to be made entirely of controlled lightning crackled softly while communicating with Dr. Chen through rapid flashes of light. These are some of our senior partners, Dr. Chen explained, settling into a chair that molded itself to support her perfectly. They help us with various research projects. Now, what's this about something the Coalition wants to send us? Vex activated his datapad and projected a holographic image into the center of the room. The apex appeared as a writhing mass of shadows and teeth, tentacles and claws, with eyes that seemed to burn with the fury of dying stars.
Even in holographic form, it radiated menace. This is the apex, Vex said.
It was discovered in the void between galaxies approximately 2,000 years ago. The initial exploration team that found it, none of them survived. When we sent a military fleet to investigate, The apex consumed 3 dreadnoughts before we managed to contain it using a combination of stasis fields and dimensional locks. Dr. Chen leaned forward, studying the image with scientific interest rather than fear. What does it eat? Everything, Vex replied grimly. Matter, energy, even space-time itself in small quantities. It grows stronger with each meal. The few times we've released it for study, it required increasingly powerful containment measures. The last time it broke free and devoured an entire solar system before we could stop it. But you want to release it against the Devourers, Dr. Chen said. It wasn't a question. The Devourers are winning, Vex admitted. We've lost 60% of Coalition space in just 3 cycles. Our most powerful weapons barely scratch their hull plating. Conventional warfare has failed completely. The Apex is the only thing in our arsenal that might be able to actually hurt them. And you want us to control it, Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. Why us? Vex gestured around the room at the impossible collection of creatures peacefully coexisting. Because humans have a reputation for befriending the unbefriendable. Your species forms emotional bonds with creatures that should be natural enemies. You've somehow convinced predators to protect prey, taught hunters to nurture, and turned killers into companions. The lightning creature sparked brighter, communicating rapidly with Dr. Chen through its flashes. She nodded thoughtfully. Spark here wants to know if the Apex is intelligent. Highly intelligent, Vex confirmed. Its thought patterns are unlike anything we've encountered, but it definitely possesses consciousness. It seems to view other life forms as either food or threats. There's no middle ground. Has anyone ever tried to communicate with it directly? Dr. Chen, this creature has killed thousands of beings. It shows no mercy, no hesitation, no emotion except hunger and rage. Communication attempts have only resulted in more casualties. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, studying the holographic apex as it writhed in its projected prison. The dimensional cat jumped onto her lap and began purring, a sound that seemed to resonate in frequencies that made Vex's bones vibrate pleasantly. You know, she said finally, every creature we've ever worked with was considered impossibly dangerous by someone. When we first brought Umbra aboard, the Shadowhound Species Council declared us insane. Shadow wolves were supposed to be solitary killers that consumed life force. No one believed they could form pack bonds with non-shadow beings. Umbra's head tilted at the mention of his name, and he patted over to rest his massive head on Dr. Chen's free hand. The gesture was clearly one of affection, despite the creature's terrifying appearance. The council changed their tune when they saw him protecting human children during the Centauri evacuation. Dr. Chen continued. Turned out shadow wolves weren't emotionless killers. They were just incredibly lonely. They'd been hunting life force because they were trying to feel connected to something. Anything. Once Umbra realized he could form a genuine pack bond with humans, he never fed on another intelligent being. The starlight bird chimed in with what sounded like melodic laughter. Dr. Chen smiled. Melody agrees. She used to be a song siren, luring ships to their destruction with irresistible music. Now she composes lullabies for our children. Dr. Chen, with respect, this is different, Vex protested. The apex isn't just dangerous, it's actively malevolent. It enjoys causing suffering. We have recordings of it playing with its prey before consuming them. Or, Dr. Chen said gently, it's a highly intelligent being that's been imprisoned and studied like a laboratory animal for 2,000 years. Wouldn't you be a little angry after that kind of treatment? The idea had never occurred to Vex. In all his briefings about the apex, it had always been presented as a force of nature like a hurricane or a black hole. The possibility that it might have feelings, motivations beyond hunger, had never been considered. You're suggesting we should empathize with a creature that has committed genocide, Vex said slowly. I'm suggesting that maybe genocide wasn't its original intention, Dr. Chen replied. Think about it. A being of incredible power, possibly the only one of its kind, suddenly surrounded by creatures that immediately try to cage it. Every interaction it's had with our galaxy has been violent. Maybe it learned to be a monster because that's how we taught it to survive. The lightning creature sparked again, longer this time. Dr. Chen nodded. Spark makes a good point. Even if the apex is genuinely malevolent, that doesn't mean it can't change. We've seen reformation in creatures that were considered irredeemably evil. And if you're wrong, Vex asked, if it can't be reformed? If it turns on Earth? Dr. Chen looked out at her home planet. then at the collection of impossible creatures that had somehow become her family. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But Commander, the galaxy is dying. Your people are dying. Sometimes the only way to fight a monster is with another monster. The question is whether you want that monster to be your enemy or your friend. Umbra made a low sound that might have been agreement. The Shadow Wolf's eyes met Vex's directly, and for a moment the Coalition commander felt an odd sense of understanding pass between them. Here was a creature that had once been feared across multiple star systems, now serving as a protector and companion. If we agree to this, Dr. Chen said, we do it our way. No weapons pointed at the apex, no containment fields, no threats. We meet it as equals and see what happens. Vex's mandibles clicked nervously. Everything in his military training screamed that this was insane. But as he looked around the room at the impossible collection of reformed predators, he began to wonder if insanity might be exactly what the galaxy needed. I'll need to contact High Command, he said finally. Of course, Dr. Chen replied. While you do that, we'll start preparing. If we're going to try this, we'll need the right environment and the right approach. This isn't just about releasing the apex. It's about giving it a chance to choose what it wants to become. The Coalition's response was predictably explosive. Admiral Thornax's holographic image flickered with interference as emergency transmissions flooded the communication channels from across the galaxy. Behind him, Vex could see the chaos of the Coalition's temporary command center as officers scrambled to coordinate yet another retreat. Absolutely not, Thornax declared, his scales darkening with agitation. Commander Vex, the humans propose to release the apex without any containment measures. They want to simply let it loose and hope for the best? This is madness. Sir, their success rate with dangerous creatures is unprecedented, Vex argued, though he felt his own doubts creeping in. They've managed to form partnerships with beings that were considered impossible to tame. The apex isn't some wayward predator, Commander. It's a weapon of mass destruction with intelligence and malice. We're talking about a creature that once consumed an entire star system in less than 6 hours. Dr. Chen, who had been listening quietly to the exchange, stepped forward. Admiral, may I ask you something? In all your encounters with the apex, has anyone ever tried speaking to it without weapons drawn? Has anyone ever offered it something other than imprisonment or death? Thornax's expression turned incredulous. Dr. Chen, this creature has killed thousands of Coalition personnel. It shows no mercy, no compassion, no trust, Dr. Chen interrupted gently. Admiral, imagine if every interaction you'd ever had with another species involved them trying to cage, study, or kill you. How would you respond to the next group that approached you? The communication fell silent except for the distant sounds of alarms and evacuation orders. Vex could see Thornax struggling with the concept. Military doctrine had always treated the apex as a force of nature, rather than a being capable of reason or emotion. Dr. Chen, Thornax said finally, even if your theory is correct, the risk is astronomical. If the apex cannot be reformed, if it turns against Earth or escapes into the galaxy, then we'll be no worse off than we are now, Dr. Chen replied. Admiral, you came to us because traditional methods have failed. The Devourers are winning using overwhelming force and ruthless efficiency. Maybe it's time to try something they won't expect. Compassion. A new voice crackled through the communication system. This is Dr. Marcus Webb, director of Earth's Xenological Institute. The image split to show an elderly human male with kind eyes and prematurely gray hair. Admiral, we've been monitoring your situation. Our analysis suggests that the Devourers operate on pure logic. They consume resources to expand their numbers, following the most efficient paths of destruction. They likely cannot comprehend cooperation between species, especially voluntary cooperation. What's your point, Dr. Webb? Thornax asked impatiently. The point is that they probably have no protocols for dealing with a creature like the apex if it's working alongside other species rather than against them. Their strategy is based on predictable responses, fight or flee. They won't know how to react to something that doesn't fit their parameters. Vex felt a spark of hope. You're suggesting that an allied apex would be more than just a powerful weapon. It would be completely outside the Devourer's tactical experience. Exactly, Dr. Webb confirmed. But more importantly, we believe that isolation and hostility have shaped the apex's behavior. Our xenopsychology team has studied the available data, and the pattern is consistent with extreme defensive responses to perceived threats. Admiral Thornax was quiet for a long moment, considering. In the background, Vex could hear reports of another coalition fleet being overwhelmed. Time was running out for everyone. If we agree to this, Thornax said slowly, what guarantees can you offer? None, Dr. Chen replied honestly. We can't guarantee the Apex will choose to help. We can't guarantee it won't be hostile. What we can guarantee is that we'll treat it with dignity and respect, give it choices, and hope that kindness can accomplish what force has failed to achieve. That's not very reassuring, Doctor. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. Admiral, hope isn't supposed to be reassuring. It's supposed to be necessary. 3 hours later, the most heavily guarded transport in galactic history began its journey to Earth. The Apex rode in a containment unit that had required the combined efforts of 6 different species to construct. Energy dampeners, dimensional locks, matter disruptors, and temporal stabilizers all worked in concert to keep the creature imprisoned. Vex accompanied the transport, along with a full scientific team and enough firepower to level a small moon. As they approached the Sol system, he found himself amazed once again by the unique nature of human space. Instead of challenging the heavily armed convoy, the Earth Defense Network simply opened a corridor and guided them to a specially prepared facility. The facility itself was unlike anything Vex had ever seen. Instead of a sterile laboratory or a military compound, the humans had constructed what could only be described as a habitat. Rolling hills covered in strange earth vegetation surrounded a central area with streams, trees, and what appeared to be naturally occurring caves. We designed it based on our analysis of the Apex's psychology, Dr. Chen explained as they toured the facility. Every time it's been contained, it's been in artificial, hostile environments. We thought it might respond better to something more natural. This looks like a park, Vex observed. That's exactly what it is, Dr. Webb confirmed. We've learned that environment affects behavior in profound ways. Creatures that are aggressive in cages often become calm in open spaces where they don't feel trapped. The transport carrying the Apex settled onto a prepared landing pad at the edge of the habitat. Teams of humans began setting up monitoring equipment, but Vex noticed they were doing so at a respectful distance. No weapons were visible, no containment fields crackled with energy. Dr. Chen, Vex said nervously, shouldn't you have some sort of backup plan? Emergency protocols? We do, she replied, gesturing to a group of her creature companions who had gathered nearby. Umbra stood alert but calm, his shadow essence rippling gently. The lightning creature sparked in complex patterns while the dimensional cat seemed to phase in and out of visible reality. If the Apex proves hostile, our friends here will protect us. But we're hoping it won't come to that. The containment unit was slowly transported to the center of the habitat. Dr. Chen walked alongside it, speaking in a calm, steady voice. Hello? She said simply. My name is Sarah Chen. I know you've been imprisoned for a very long time, and I know you have every reason to be angry. We're going to release you now, not because we want to use you as a weapon, but because imprisonment is wrong. You have the right to be free. Vex's instruments detected massive energy fluctuations from within the containment unit. The Apex was responding to Dr. Chen's words, though whether with curiosity or rage was impossible to determine. We know about the Devourers, Dr. Chen continued. We know they're destroying everything in their path. We're hoping you might choose to help us stop them, but that choice is yours to make. We won't force you or threaten you or try to control you. Whatever you decide, we'll respect it. The transport reached the designated release point. Dr. Chen nodded to her team, and they began powering down the containment systems. Energy barriers flickered and died. Dimensional locks disengaged. Temporal stabilizers went silent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the containment unit began to crack, hairline fractures spreading across its surface like a broken eggshell. A sound emerged that Vex had never heard before, not quite a roar, not quite a song, but something that seemed to resonate in dimensions beyond the normal 3. The unit shattered completely, and the Apex was free. It rose from the wreckage like a living nightmare, all flowing shadow and burning eyes. Tentacles and claws and teeth that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was larger than the recordings had shown, more complex, more alien. This was a being that could unmake reality itself if it chose to. The Apex looked around the habitat, taking in the open sky, the flowing water, the growing things. Then its burning gaze settled on Dr. Chen, who stood calmly just 20 meters away. "Hello," she said again. "Welcome to Earth." The apex stood motionless for what felt like an eternity, its impossible form shifting between states of matter, as if it couldn't decide which version of reality it preferred. Vex gripped his emergency communicator, ready to call for evacuation, but Dr. Chen remained perfectly still, her hands open and visible, her expression calm and welcoming. When the apex finally spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through dimensions that human ears weren't designed to perceive. The translation system struggled to interpret the alien concepts, producing words that felt inadequate for the thoughts behind them. "Small warm thing speaks of freedom," the apex said, each word crackling with power that made the air itself shimmer. But small warm things' companions point metal sticks at apex. "This is the freedom warm things offer?" Dr. Chen turned slightly to see the distant coalition security teams, their weapons trained on the creature despite her specific instructions. She sighed and activated her communicator. "All coalition personnel, stand down immediately. Lower your weapons and withdraw to minimum safe distance." "That's not a request." Vex felt his mandibles click in protest. "Dr. Chen, we cannot leave you undefended against—" "Commander," Dr. Chen said firmly, "your weapons couldn't hurt the apex anyway. They're just making it feel threatened. Please trust me on this." Reluctantly, Vex ordered his teams to withdraw. The apex watched this exchange with what might have been curiosity, its burning eyes following the retreating soldiers. "Warm Thing commands the metal stick carriers," the apex observed. "Yet Warm Thing shows no metal sticks of its own. This is unexpected." "I don't believe in pointing weapons at potential friends," Dr. Chen replied simply. "My name is Sarah, by the way. Do you have a name?" The question seemed to surprise the apex. Its form flickered through several configurations before settling into something slightly more stable. "Names are for things that belong to other things. Apex belongs to nothing. Apex is nothing's possession." "Names aren't about possession," Dr. Chen said gently. "They're about identity, about being recognized as an individual rather than just a thing. You are clearly an individual, a unique being with your own thoughts and feelings. You deserve a name if you want one." The apex moved closer, its massive form flowing rather than walking. Vex noticed that where its appendages touched the ground, the grass didn't wither or die as he'd expected. Instead, it seemed to grow more vibrant, as if the creature's presence somehow enhanced life rather than destroying it. "Apex has been called Destroyer, Consumer, the Hungry Dark," the creature said, "always names given by others. Never names chosen. What would you choose?" Dr. Chen asked. The apex considered this, its form stabilizing further as it thought. In the void between stars, where Apex dwelt before the cage makers found it, there was silence. Perfect, complete silence. Apex was content in the silence. Before the pain, before the anger, there was peace. "Silence is beautiful," Dr. Chen agreed. "Would you like to be called Silence? Or perhaps something that means silence in your own language?" "Vashitai," the apex said, and for the first time its voice carried something other than rage or hunger. In the old tongue, before words meant caging and hurting, Vashitai meant the peace between storms. "Hello, Vashtai," Dr. Chen said, and Vex was amazed to see her smile. "I'm honored to meet you." Umbra chose that moment to pad forward, the shadow wolf moving with careful deliberation. Vashitai's attention shifted to the approaching creature, and Vex tensed, ready for violence. Instead, something remarkable happened. Vashitai extended one of its appendages toward Umbra, moving slowly and carefully. The shadow wolf sniffed the offered appendage, then made a low sound that Vex had learned to recognize as Umbra's version of a greeting. The two shadow creatures regarded each other for a moment, and Vex realized he was witnessing first contact between two beings who existed partially outside normal reality. "Your companion understands shadow space," Vashitai observed. "This is rare among the warm things. Umbra came to us much like you did," Dr. Chen explained. "He was considered a monster, impossible to tame or befriend. But he was really just lonely. All he wanted was a pack to belong to." "Pack," Vashtai repeated the word as if tasting it. "Apex." "Vashtai has no pack, has been alone since the beginning of memory." "You don't have to be alone anymore," Dr. Chen said gently. "If you want to join our pack, you're welcome. No conditions, no requirements except that you don't hurt the innocent." Vashatai's form shifted again, becoming more solid, more defined. The warm things speak of joining, but Vashti knows why Vashti was freed. The Metal Eaters consume the galaxy. The cage makers want Vashti to fight the Metal Eaters. The Devourers are a threat to everyone, Dr. Chen acknowledged. But we freed you because imprisonment is wrong, not because we want to use you as a weapon. If you choose to help us fight the Devourers, we'll be grateful. If you choose to leave and find your own path, we'll respect that too. And if Vashti chooses to consume the warm things? The creature asked, though its tone suggested curiosity rather than threat. Then our friends here would try to stop you, Dr. Chen replied honestly, gesturing to Umbra and the other creatures who had gathered nearby. But we don't think you want to hurt us. You could have attacked the moment you were freed, but instead you're talking to us. That tells us something important about who you really are. Vashti was quiet for a long time, its attention turning to the habitat around them. A small earth creature, some kind of pollinating insect, landed on one of its appendages. Instead of being consumed or destroyed, the insect simply sat there, apparently unbothered by contact with one of the galaxy's most feared predators. This place, Vashti said slowly. It grows. It lives without consuming other life. How is this possible? It's called symbiosis, Dr. Chen explained. All the life forms here support each other. The plants provide food and oxygen. The animals help with pollination and seed dispersal. The soil organisms break down waste and create nutrients. Everyone gives and everyone receives. Vashti has only known taking, the creature admitted. When hunger came, Vashti took. When pain came, Vashti gave pain to others. This giving and receiving, Vashti does not understand. You don't have to understand it all at once, Dr. Chen assured it. Understanding comes with time and experience. If you're willing to try, we can teach you. And maybe you can teach us things too. What could Vashti teach the warm things? You've lived in the void between galaxies, Dr. Chen said thoughtfully. You've seen things no other being has witnessed. You understand dimensions and energies that we can barely comprehend. You have knowledge that could benefit everyone. Vashti considered this, its form continuing to stabilize and become more defined. Vex realized that the creature was actually becoming smaller, condensing its mass into a more manageable size. The rage and hunger that had defined its presence were fading, replaced by something that might have been hope. The Metal Eaters, Vashti said suddenly. Vashti has observed them from the void. They are not alive as Vashti understands life. They are echoes, copies of something that once was. What do you mean? Dr. Chen asked, her scientific curiosity clearly piqued. Long ago, in a galaxy far from here, there was a species that faced extinction. They tried to preserve themselves by transferring their consciousness into machines, but the transfer was imperfect. Only the hunger remained, only the need to consume and reproduce. The Metal Eaters are not conquerors, they are ghosts, trying to fill a void that can never be filled. This revelation sent shockwaves through the monitoring equipment, as Coalition scientists frantically recorded every word. If Vashti was right, it changed everything they knew about the Devourer threat. Do you know how to stop them? Dr. Chen asked. Vashti knows many things, the creature replied. But first Vashti must understand this pack the warm thing speaks of. This joining without taking. This giving and receiving. If Vashti is to be more than hunger and anger, Vashti must learn new ways. Dr. Chen smiled and extended her hand toward the massive creature. Then let's start learning together. Vashti regarded the offered hand for a moment, then carefully extended one of its own appendages. When they touched, Vex expected to see Dr. Chen consumed or destroyed. Instead, he witnessed something unprecedented. A being of pure destruction choosing for the first time in its existence to be gentle. The days that followed Vashti's liberation were unlike anything in recorded galactic history. News of the Apex's peaceful release spread through Coalition space like wildfire, creating reactions ranging from awe to terror to desperate hope. Meanwhile, on Earth, something remarkable was happening. Vashti was learning to be part of a community. Dr. Chen watched from her observation deck as the massive creature carefully tended to a section of the habitat garden. Its appendages, which had once torn apart starships, now delicately supported growing vines and adjusted soil composition with precision that amazed the human botanists. The transformation wasn't just behavioral, It was fundamental. Vashtai's very presence seemed to enhance life rather than destroy it. The symbiosis concept fascinates it, Dr. Webb observed, joining Chen at the observation window. Look how it's integrated itself into the ecosystem. Those aren't earth plants it's growing. They're something new, a hybrid of earth flora and what I can only describe as void life. The plants Vashtai tended were indeed extraordinary. They grew in impossible spirals, their leaves shifting between dimensions, their roots extending into what appeared to be empty space. Yet they coexisted perfectly with the earth vegetation, each enhancing the other's growth. It's creating something beautiful, Dr. Chen said softly, something that never existed before. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Admiral Thornax's image appeared in the room, but this time he wasn't alone. Representatives from dozens of coalition species crowded around him, all eager to hear about humanity's impossible success. Dr. Chen, Thornax began, our monitoring stations report that Vashtai's energy signature has completely changed. The destructive patterns we've tracked for 2 millennia have been replaced by something our instruments can barely classify. What have you done? We gave it a choice, Dr. Chen replied simply. And it chose to create rather than destroy. But how is this possible? Demanded General Korath, a massive Krolix warrior whose species had lost 3 colonies to the apex years ago. This creature murdered thousands of my people. Vashtai's voice suddenly filled the communication chamber, speaking directly through the quantum communication system without any technological interface. Krolix General speaks truth. Vashtai brought death to the scaled warriors. This was wrong. Vashtai apologizes. The word apologizes sent shockwaves through the assembled coalition representatives. Some species didn't even have concepts for genuine remorse from such a powerful being. Apologies do not resurrect the dead, General Korath said harshly, though his voice carried confusion rather than pure anger. No, Vashtai agreed, but Vashtai offers what it can. Knowledge of the void paths, understanding of dimensional folding, methods of faster travel and communication. Vashtai will share these gifts with the Krolix people, that they might grow strong and protect others from the hunger that once drove Vashtai. Dr. Chen felt tears forming in her eyes. The creature that had once been pure destruction was now offering to help rebuild what it had torn down. Furthermore, Vashtai continued, Vashtai has learned much from the Warm Pack about the Metal Eaters. They can be stopped, but not through destruction. Destruction is what created them. They must be healed. Healed? Admiral Thornax echoed. Vashtai, the Devourers have consumed entire star systems. How do you heal something like that? By giving them what they truly seek, Vashtai replied. The Metal Eaters are incomplete beings, echoes of a species that tried to preserve itself in machines. They consume because they are trying to remember how to be whole. They reproduce because they are trying to find their missing pieces, but what they seek cannot be found through consumption. The communication chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If Vashtai was correct, the galaxy had been fighting the wrong war entirely. What do they need? Dr. Chen asked. Connection, Vashtai said simply. They need to remember what it feels like to be part of something larger than themselves. They need to understand that wholeness comes not from taking, but from belonging. You're suggesting we try to communicate with them? Admiral Thornax asked incredulously. These machines have shown no interest in anything but destruction. Because no one has offered them anything else, Vashtai replied. The Metal Eaters encounter only resistance, only violence. They have never been shown another way. But Vashtai knows the void songs that called to them in their original forms. With proper preparation, Vashtai could speak to them in ways they would understand. General Korath's scales darkened with skepticism. And if this communication fails? If they respond with more violence? Then Vashtai will protect the Warm Packs and the Scale Packs and all the other life forms, the creature replied. But now Vashtai protects to preserve, not to destroy. There is difference. Over the following week, humanity's greatest xenolinguists worked with Vashtai to develop a communication protocol that might reach the Devourers. The process was unlike anything they'd attempted before, requiring translation not just between languages but between entire concepts of existence. The fascinating thing, Dr. Webb explained to the assembled coalition leaders, is that Vashtai itself underwent a similar transformation to what we're hoping to achieve with the Devourers. It was a being of pure consumption, driven by hunger and isolation. Through connection and belonging, it found a new way to exist. But Vashitai chose to change, pointed out Ambassador Trill of the Aquatic Collective. The Devourers have shown no such inclination. Neither did Vashitai initially, Dr. Chen replied. It took time, patience, and most importantly, treating it with dignity and respect. We're hoping the same approach might work with the Devourers. The test came sooner than expected. A Devourer scout fleet, 3 massive ships the size of moons, appeared at the edge of Coalition space. Instead of the usual evacuation orders, however, this time the Coalition sent a very different kind of delegation. Vashtai traveled alone aboard a specially constructed vessel, one designed not for war but for communication. The ship itself was a marvel of human bioengineering enhanced by Vashtai's void knowledge, creating something that existed partially outside normal space-time. As the ship approached the Devourer fleet, Vashtai began to sing. It wasn't sound in any conventional sense, but rather vibrations and dimensions that most beings couldn't perceive. The song carried memories of the void between galaxies, the peace of infinite silence and something new, the warmth of connection, the joy of belonging to something greater than oneself. The Devourer ships, which had been moving in their typical aggressive formation, suddenly stopped, their weapons powered down. For the first time in recorded history, they made no hostile moves. Then, impossibly, they began to sing back. The response was broken, fragmented, like an echo of an echo. But it was clearly an attempt at communication. Through the quantum communication link, Coalition scientists recorded what would become known as the first peaceful contact with the Devourers. Metal Song remembers Star Song, came the translated message. Metal Song lost, broken, hungry, seeking completion. Void Song remembers Metal Song, Vashtai replied. Void Song was also lost, also hungry. Void Song found warm pack, found belonging. Metal Song can find belonging too. The exchange continued for hours, with Vashitai patiently teaching the Devourers new concepts. Cooperation instead of consumption, symbiosis instead of domination, healing instead of destruction. It was slow work, like teaching a new language to beings who had forgotten they were capable of learning. But gradually, incredibly, it began to work. The Devourer ship's destructive modifications started to retract. Weapon systems were absorbed back into their hulls. Their aggressive formations dissolved into something that resembled curiosity rather than hostility. This changes everything, Admiral Thornax whispered over the communication link. If Vashitai can teach them to choose differently, the galaxy can finally know peace, Dr. Chen finished. Not through the victory of one side over another, but through understanding that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves. As she watched the impossible sight of former enemies learning to communicate, Dr. Chen reflected on how far they'd all come. Vashitai had transformed from the galaxy's greatest destroyer into its greatest healer, and now that healing was spreading to touch even the seemingly irredeemable Devourers, it was proof of something humans had always believed but rarely had the chance to demonstrate on such a scale, that even the most broken beings could find redemption if someone was willing to offer them connection instead of condemnation. 6 months after first contact with the Devourers, the galaxy was unrecognizable. What had begun as a desperate last resort had evolved into the most successful peace initiative in galactic history. But the transformation wasn't without its challenges. Dr. Chen stood in the newly constructed Harmony Station, a marvel of cooperative engineering that existed partially in normal space and partially in the void dimensions that Vashitai called home. The station served as a neutral meeting ground where former enemies could learn to coexist, but tensions still ran high among many coalition species. I don't care what you call them now, General Korath growled during the daily briefing. The Reclaimers may have stopped their aggressive expansion, but they still consume matter to reproduce. How do we know they won't revert to their old patterns? The Devourers had chosen new names for themselves as part of their transformation process. No longer seeing themselves as consumers of life, they had become the Reclaimers, beings dedicated to restoring what had been lost and healing what had been broken. But many coalition members remained skeptical. General, with respect, the same argument could have been made about Vashitai. Dr. Chen replied patiently, change is possible, but it requires time and trust from both sides. Vashti's presence filled the chamber as the creature materialized from the dimensional space where it spent much of its time. Its form had continued to evolve, becoming more stable and defined while retaining its otherworldly nature. Where once it had radiated menace, now it seemed to emanate calm and wisdom. "Scaled warrior speaks from pain," Vashti observed gently. "This is understood. Trust must be earned through actions, not words. The metal singers have much work to do before forgiveness can be asked." "At least you acknowledge the harm you've caused," General Korath replied, his tone slightly less hostile than usual. "These reclaimers act as if their past destruction was simply a misunderstanding." "Because for them it was," came a new voice. The speaker was a reclaimer designated as Harmony Seeker, one of the first to undergo the consciousness expansion that Vashti had taught them. Its voice carried musical tones that hadn't existed in Devourer communications before. "We remember now the pain of incompleteness, the desperate hunger for connection. But at the time, we understood only the need to consume. We had no context for cooperation or restraint. The revelation that the reclaimers could recover their original memories had been one of the most significant breakthroughs of the peace process. Vashti's void songs had helped them access consciousness patterns that had been buried beneath millennia of mechanical existence. The metal singers now remember their first forms," Vashti explained. "They were called the Inari, builders of great harmony structures that sang across star systems. When their star began to die, they sought to preserve themselves in metal forms, but the transfer lost essential components: emotion, empathy, the understanding of connection. So they became empty shells, driven only by base programming," Dr. Chen added. "Consume resources, reproduce, expand. Without the original consciousness to guide them, they became exactly what they were designed to prevent: an extinction event." Harmony Seekers' form shifted, expressing what their species had learned to recognize as regret. "We can remember building the first harmony spires on Inari Prime. We can remember the music of 1,000,000,000,000 voices joined in perfect cooperation. And we can remember the fear when the star began to collapse, the desperate attempt to preserve our civilization, but we lost ourselves in the process. And now you're trying to find your way back," Dr. Chen said. "That's what the restoration projects are about, isn't it?" The reclaimers had begun an unprecedented undertaking across their former territory. Instead of consuming dead worlds, they were rebuilding them. Dead stars were being reignited using technologies that combined reclaimer engineering with Vashti's void knowledge. Destroyed ecosystems were being restored with genetic templates the reclaimers had inadvertently preserved during their consumption phase. "Each world we heal helps us remember more of who we were," Harmony Seeker confirmed. "The act of creation resonates with our original nature in ways that consumption never could." Commander Vex, who had become the primary coalition liaison to the project, activated a holographic display showing the restoration progress. "The results are remarkable," he reported. "The Kepler system, which was completely consumed 2 years ago, now has 3 habitable worlds with thriving ecosystems. The Vega colonies, evacuated just months before our first contact, are now more beautiful than they ever were. But the question remains," General Korath pressed. "What happens when this cooperation ends? What guarantees do we have that they won't revert to their destructive patterns?" "The same guarantee Vashti offers," Dr. Chen replied. "The understanding that they're part of something larger now. The reclaimers aren't just restoring dead worlds. They're becoming part of the galactic community. They have relationships, responsibilities, connections that give them purpose beyond mere survival." To demonstrate her point, Dr. Chen activated another display showing the newest addition to Harmony Station. A massive biomechanical garden stretched across multiple levels, where reclaimer technology nurtured earth plants alongside Krolix coral formations and Zelani crystal trees. At the center, Vashti's void plants created impossible spiral patterns that somehow enhanced the growth of everything around them. "This is what cooperation looks like," Dr. Chen said. "Each species contributing their unique gifts to create something none of us could achieve alone." "The Warm Pack taught Vashti that strength comes from connection," Vashti added. "Now Vashti teaches this to the metal singers and they teach it to others. The lesson spreads like ripples in void space." Harmony Seeker's musical tones shifted to something that sounded almost like laughter. "We find it amusing that beings we once saw as prey now teach us about predation and cooperation. Humans understand both the drive to consume and the choice to nurture. This makes them ideal mediators. Speaking of mediation, Dr. Chen said, we've received requests from 17 different sectors asking for assistance with long-standing conflicts. It seems word is spreading about our methods. The success of the Reclaimer integration had indeed attracted attention from across the galaxy. Species that had been at war for centuries were requesting human mediation, hoping to achieve similar breakthroughs. It was more responsibility than humanity had ever expected to shoulder. The irony isn't lost on us, Dr. Webb observed as he joined the briefing. 6 months ago, we were considered a minor species that talked to dangerous pets. Now we're being asked to reshape galactic politics. Power is responsibility, Vashti said solemnly. The Warm Pack chose to free Vashti when others would have used it as weapon. This choice changed everything. Now Warm Pack must choose how to use the influence that choice has brought. Dr. Chen looked around the chamber at the assembled beings, coalition military leaders, Reclaimer consciousness singers, void-touched creatures, and her fellow humans. 6 months ago, most of these beings would have been trying to kill each other. Now they were planning the future of galactic civilization together. We'll face that challenge the same way we've faced all the others, she decided. By believing that understanding is possible, that enemies can become friends, and that the choice to show compassion is always more powerful than the choice to show force. General Korath's scales had gradually lightened during the discussion, indicating a shift toward acceptance. I still have reservations, he admitted. My people have suffered too much to trust easily. But I cannot deny what I've witnessed here. If the Apex can become a gardener, and the Devourers can become healers, perhaps there is hope for old wounds to heal as well. Healing is choice that must be made each day, Vashti observed. Not just once, but continuously. This is what Vashti learned from Warm Pack. Tomorrow must be chosen again tomorrow. As the briefing concluded and the various representatives returned to their duties, Dr. Chen remained in the observation chamber, watching the impossible garden below. Harmony Seeker was working alongside Umbra to install a new section of biomechanical coral, their forms creating a tableau that would have been unthinkable just months ago. Change was possible. Even the most fundamental natures could be transformed through connection and understanding. But as Vashti had pointed out, the choice had to be made anew each day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose cooperation over conflict. And humanity would continue to believe in the possibility of transformation, one impossible friendship at a time. 2 years after the first peace accords were signed, Dr. Sarah Chen found herself standing before the newly formed Galactic Harmony Council, addressing representatives from over 200 species. The chamber itself was a testament to how far they'd all come, a living structure that had grown from the collaboration between human bioengineering, Reclaimer technology, and Vashti's void knowledge. The success of the integration protocol has exceeded our most optimistic projections, Dr. Chen reported to the assembled delegates. We now have 47 former conflict zones where traditional enemies are working together on restoration projects. The hegemony wars that have raged for 3 centuries have been replaced by cooperative terraforming initiatives. The statistics were remarkable, but Dr. Chen knew the real victory lay in smaller moments, like watching a Krolix engineer teaching Reclaimer consciousness singers how to grow coral reefs in space, or seeing Vashti patiently showing Zelani children how to cultivate void plants that could survive in any environment. However, Dr. Chen continued, we're facing new challenges as our methods spread. Not every species is ready for the kind of fundamental change we're asking them to consider, and not every conflict can be resolved through our approach. Admiral Thornax, now serving as the Coalition's representative to the Council, nodded grimly. The Dominion of Shards has rejected all diplomatic overtures. They view our integration successes as a threat to what they call species purity. Intelligence suggests they're mobilizing for a preemptive strike against several Harmony stations. The Dominion represented everything the new galactic order stood against: rigid hierarchy, racial supremacy, and the belief that cooperation was weakness. They had watched the transformation of the Devourers with growing alarm, seeing it not as a miracle of diplomacy, but as dangerous contamination of natural order. Furthermore, Admiral Thornax continued, there are reports of extremist groups within several coalition species. They call themselves purists, and they believe that former enemies like the Reclaimers can never truly be trusted. Some have attempted sabotage operations against Harmony projects. Vashti's presence filled the chamber, as the creature manifested from its preferred dimensional space. Its form had evolved yet again, becoming more integrated with the living architecture of the council chambers. Where it touched the walls, patterns of light flowed like living neural networks. Change frightens many beings, Vashti observed. Vashti understands this fear. When first offered freedom by Warmpack, Vashti also feared that connection might be trap, that kindness might be weakness. Fear makes wise beings act foolishly. Harmony Seeker materialized beside Vashti, its biomechanical form now incorporating organic elements that allowed it to interface directly with living systems. The Reclaimer had become one of the most effective ambassadors for integration, precisely because it could demonstrate the possibility of fundamental change. The Dominion fears what we represent, Harmony Seeker said, its musical tones carrying harmonics that conveyed complex emotional content. We are proof that identity is not fixed, that even the most basic nature can be transformed. This threatens their entire worldview. Dr. Chen felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Humanity had inadvertently become the center of a galactic philosophical revolution, and not everyone welcomed that revolution. The question before us, she said, is how we respond to those who reject cooperation. Do we force change on unwilling participants? Do we defend ourselves against those who see us as threats? How do we maintain our principles while protecting the progress we've made? General Korath, whose own transformation from skeptic to advocate had been one of the Council's greatest successes, spoke up. My people have a saying, the strong tree bends with the storm but does not break. Perhaps our strength lies not in rigidity, but in our ability to adapt to new challenges while maintaining our core values. But what are our core values? Asked Ambassador Trill. Are we committed to universal integration, or do we accept that some beings will always choose isolation and conflict? The debate that followed touched on fundamental questions about the nature of civilization, freedom, and the right to remain unchanged. It was exactly the kind of complex moral territory that had no easy answers. Vashti once believed that strength meant consuming everything smaller, the void creature finally said, breaking a long silence. Then Vashti learned that true strength meant protecting everything vulnerable. Now Vashti understands third truth. Sometimes protection means allowing others to make choices that seem wrong. You're suggesting we let the Dominion attack us? Admiral Thornax asked incredulously. Vashti suggests that Warmpack wisdom applies even to difficult choices. The creature replied. Warmpack freed Vashti without demanding change. Change came because freedom allowed Vashti to discover better ways. Perhaps Dominion beings must also be free to choose their path, even if that path leads to conflict. Dr. Chen felt a moment of clarity. We can't force anyone to change, but we can demonstrate that our way leads to better outcomes, and we can defend ourselves without abandoning our principles. How? General Korath asked. By showing the Dominion and the purist what they're really fighting, Dr. Chen replied. Not through propaganda or argument, but through direct experience. The plan that emerged from the council sessions was unprecedented in its audacity. Instead of meeting Dominion aggression with military force, they would invite Dominion representatives to witness integration projects firsthand. Not as prisoners or conquered enemies, but as observers free to draw their own conclusions. This is madness, protested several military advisors. We're inviting our enemies to study our most sensitive operations. We're inviting our potential friends to see what friendship looks like, Dr. Chen corrected. The same approach that worked with Vashti and the Reclaimers. The first test came when a Dominion strike fleet arrived at Kepler Station, one of the most successful restoration projects. Instead of being met by defensive formations, they found a small delegation led by Dr. Chen herself, Vashti, and Harmony Seeker. Dominion Fleet Commander Zektar, Dr. Chen broadcast on open channels. I'm Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth. We know you've come to attack this station. We're here to invite you to see what you'd be destroying first. The response was predictably hostile. Human, you will surrender this abomination of nature or face the consequences. The Dominion does not negotiate with heretics who consort with mechanical parasites. We're not asking you to negotiate, Dr. Chen replied calmly. We're asking you to look. Send a small team aboard our station. See what we've built here. If you still want to destroy it afterward, we won't stop you. The audacity of the offer seemed to surprise the Dominion commander. After a long silence, a small shuttle detached from the fleet and approached the station. What the Dominion representatives saw aboard Kepler Station challenged everything they believed about species interaction. They witnessed Krolik's engineers working alongside Reclaimer consciousness singers to design new forms of living architecture. They saw human children playing with creatures that their own intelligence briefings classified as deadly predators. They observed Vashti teaching young beings from a dozen different species how to cultivate impossible gardens that thrived in the void of space. Most importantly, they saw that every being there had chosen to be there. No one was enslaved, coerced, or controlled. The cooperation was genuine, born from mutual respect and shared purpose. Commander Zektar's aide, a young Dominion officer named Veltar, was particularly affected by what she witnessed. "Sir," she said quietly during their tour, "these beings seem happy, content. I've never seen such cooperation between natural enemies." "They're deluded," Zektar replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "This cannot last. Nature demands competition, hierarchy, the strong dominating the weak. Does it?" Dr. Chen asked gently, having overheard the exchange. "Look around you, Commander. What you see here isn't against nature. It's nature taken to its logical conclusion. Evolution doesn't just create competition. It creates cooperation, symbiosis, mutual support. We're not defying natural law. We're fulfilling it." The Dominion delegation spent 3 days on the station, witnessing impossible sights and gradual shifts in their own perceptions. When they finally returned to their fleet, they carried with them seeds of doubt about everything they'd been taught. Commander Zektar's final transmission was brief. "Human Chen, the Dominion will consider what we have witnessed. We will not attack this day." As the Dominion fleet withdrew, Dr. Chen felt both relief and anticipation. The confrontation had been avoided, but the real work was just beginning. Seeds of change had been planted in minds that had seemed closed to new ideas. "Do you think it will work?" asked Harmony Seeker. "Can beings so committed to separation learn to value connection?" "Vashti was committed to destruction," Dr. Chen replied, watching the station's impossible gardens sway in artificially generated breezes. "You were committed to consumption. I was committed to the idea that some things never change. We were all wrong about what was possible." Vashti's presence enveloped them in warmth that seemed to transcend physical sensation.